Paris is called the City of Light, but 20 meters below its streets, below the cafés, the museums, the couples on the bridges, there are approximately 6 million people, not buried beneath Paris, arranged inside it, skull by skull, wall by wall. In a space that has been there for over 2 centuries and that most visitors walking above never think about, this is the story of what Paris built below itself and why it chose to keep it visible. It is a story about history, memory, and the shadow beneath one of the most beautiful cities on Earth. Not of proven ghosts, but of something far more difficult to look away from. Few cities carry the weight of expectation the way Paris does. Before a traveler even arrives, they already have a picture in their mind. The curve of the Seine at dusk, the iron lattice of the Eiffel Tower catching the last light of afternoon. Paris has earned that picture. Over centuries, it built itself into something that feels almost like a concentrated idea of beauty. And yet beneath that beauty, something older has always been present. Below parts of the city lies a vast network of old quarry tunnels, commonly estimated by various sources at around 300 kilometers. Though the precise extent of accessible and inaccessible passages is difficult to measure with certainty. Most of it is closed to the public, dangerous, unstable, or simply not meant to be entered. Inside a small official part of that underground world are the Paris Catacombs. There, arranged by human hands more than 2 centuries ago, are the remains of approximately 6 million people who lived, worked, suffered, loved, and died in Paris across many generations. Paris built its grandeur from limestone pulled out of the earth below it, which means the city was always built on what it had taken away, and eventually that hollow space would need to give something back. The official name is the Municipal Ossuary of Paris, l'Ossuaire Municipal. Most people know it simply as the Catacombs. The public ossuary occupies only a small section of the much larger underground quarry network. Visitors descend through an official route, maintained and controlled for safety. Beyond that route, the old tunnels continue into restricted and unstable areas that are not open to the public. Those forbidden passages have their own stories, and some of them will come later. But the official catacombs alone are enough to leave a lasting mark. Every year, hundreds of thousands of visitors descend a narrow spiral staircase of about 130 steps into the rock beneath Paris. They pass through bare stone corridors before reaching the ossuary itself. Then the walls change. The bones are not scattered, they are arranged. Skulls face outward in rows. Long bones form deeper layers behind them. Some sections are shaped almost like architecture, as if the dead had been turned into a solemn structure beneath the living city. Carved inscriptions appear along the path, many of them reflecting on death, time, and the briefness of human life. The effect is difficult to describe. It is not only fear, it is not only sadness. It is the feeling of standing inside a place where a city has gathered part of its own past and refused to let it disappear completely. To understand why Paris created such a place, we have to go back to the earth beneath the city, and to the centuries when that earth was still being taken away. Long before Paris became a city of grand avenues, it was a city built on limestone. For centuries, workers extracted stone from beneath and around the growing city. Much of the material used in old buildings, churches, walls, and foundations came from the ground below. Paris was, in a very literal sense, built by hollowing itself out. Over time, this created a dangerous problem. Underground cavities remained beneath streets and buildings. In some areas, the layer between the tunnels and the surface became dangerously thin. Roads could collapse, Buildings could shift. The ground itself could fail without warning. By the 18th century, the danger had become too serious to ignore. City authorities eventually established the Inspection Générale des Carrières, the general inspection of the quarries. Their task was to monitor and stabilize the underground spaces. Paris had to keep itself from being swallowed by the emptiness that helped build it. But underground danger was only part of the crisis. Above ground, Paris was running out of room for its dead. One of the city's oldest and largest cemeteries was Les Saints Innocents, in what is now the Les Halles area. For centuries, it had received the dead of Paris, through ordinary years, plague years, famine, poverty, and the slow accumulation of city life. The same ground was used again and again. By the late 18th century, the cemetery was badly overcrowded. Contemporary accounts describe the area as unhealthy and deeply unpleasant. The problem was no longer only spiritual or emotional. It had become practical. It had become urban. It had become public. In 1786, city authorities began transferring remains from Les Saints Innocents into abandoned quarry tunnels beneath the southern part of Paris. The underground that had given Paris its stone would now receive Paris's dead. The transfer continued in stages. Other overcrowded cemeteries later contributed to the growing ossuary. At first, this was not meant to be a mysterious attraction. It was a solution to a city crisis. But in the early 19th century, an administrator named Louis-Étienne Héricard de Thury helped transform the site into something more formal. The bones were arranged into structured walls. Inscriptions were added. The underground space became not only a place of storage, but a civic monument. The ossuary opened to public visits around 1809. From that moment, Paris had something few cities could show so directly. A hidden layer of its own history made visible beneath the street. Walking through the ossuary, it is difficult to describe what the experience does to a person. The stone is cold and damp. The passages are narrow. The walls are always close enough to feel present, even when you do not touch them. The air carries a particular stillness, not silence exactly. Voices echo, footsteps carry. But something beneath the sound feels heavy, as though the weight of the city above has pressed itself into the atmosphere. After the approach through bare stone tunnels, the ossuary announces itself with a carved stone archway. The French inscription above the entrance is often translated as "Halt." This is the empire of death. Inside, skull after skull faces outward from the walls at eye level. The bones of arms and legs form the deeper layers behind them. The arrangement is orderly, almost formal, and that order makes the place feel even stranger. The dead are not hidden. They are presented. The scale is almost impossible to absorb. Approximately 6 million people, not 6 million decorations, not 6 million symbols, 6 million human beings, whose names, homes, voices, hopes, and private sorrows have mostly been lost to time. Merchants and laborers, priests and children, the wealthy and the poor. People who died in ordinary years and people who died during years of disease, unrest, or revolution. In the living city, distinctions like class, money, and status mattered enormously. In the ossuary, those distinctions have vanished. The bones do not tell you who was admired, who was forgotten, who was loved, who was feared, or who once believed their name would last forever. They are all simply part of Paris now, and they are all here. But the ossuary is only the first layer of the underground. Beyond the official passage, the old tunnels hold other kinds of stories. The public catacombs are only a small official portion of the underground. Beyond them lies a much larger world of old quarry passages, restricted tunnels, blocked galleries, and unstable spaces. These areas are not part of the visitor route, and entering them without authorization is illegal and dangerous. For ordinary visitors, the official catacombs are the only safe way into this underground history. Still, the restricted tunnels have developed a culture of their own. For decades, urban explorers known as cataphiles have moved through parts of the old quarry network, guided by unofficial maps, memory, and knowledge passed from one person to another. Some are drawn by history, some by secrecy, some by the feeling of standing inside a Paris that exists outside the postcard version of the city. The stories surrounding cataphiles are now part of the modern mythology of underground Paris. There are accounts of hidden rooms, old graffiti, improvised meeting places, blocked passages, and chambers that seem to belong to a different city altogether. Some of these stories come from real urban exploration culture. Others are difficult to verify, and over time, the line between experience and legend becomes less clear. That uncertainty is part of the attraction. The Paris most visitors know is photographed, mapped, guided, and explained. In the tunnels, that familiar city disappears. Streets and landmarks give way to stone, darkness, echoes, and memory. But the mystery of those passages does not change the reality. They are restricted, unstable, and dangerous. The story of the catacombs is strongest when it is approached with respect rather than thrill-seeking. And beyond the explorers and the hidden rooms, the underground once carried something older and far more dangerous. Some sections of the Paris underground also carry a more recent and more complicated history. During the Second World War, wartime historical records and post-war documentation suggest that portions of the underground spaces beneath Paris were used for strategic purposes. Some records describe German military facilities in sections of the quarry system. Separate historical accounts describe members of the French resistance using underground passages for meetings, movement, and communication. These stories should be told carefully. They do not mean that every tunnel beneath Paris became part of the war. They do not turn the whole catacombs into a battlefield. But they do suggest that during one of the darkest periods in the city's modern history, parts of the underground took on a different kind of importance. That is one of the reasons the Paris underground feels so layered. It was first a source of stone, then a danger beneath the city, then a resting place for the dead, then a monument, and in some historical accounts, a space connected to secrecy, occupation, resistance, and survival. The tunnels beneath Paris are not one story, they are many stories placed on top of one another. Just as the city is built on centuries of lives, losses, and choices. It would be surprising if a place like this had not gathered legends. A city beneath a city, old tunnels, walls of bones, darkness that swallows the sound of the street above. These are the kinds of places where stories begin to grow. Visitors have often described unsettling feelings in the ossuary, disorientation, heaviness, unease, or the strange sense that the silence is not empty. Those accounts are part of the atmosphere of the catacombs, but they are not proof of supernatural activity. A more grounded explanation may be enough. The catacombs place people face to face with mortality on a scale that ordinary life almost never demands. The bones are not behind a distant museum case. They are near. They surround the visitor. They belong to people whose individual stories have mostly disappeared while their presence remains. That kind of encounter can create many different feelings. For some, it is grief. For others, awe. For others, dread. and for some, a quiet sense of humility. Around the official history, folklore has gathered. Stories of explorers wandering too deep, sounds without visible sources, hidden chambers found once and never located again, and passages that seem to confuse even those who think they know the way. Some stories may have roots in real dangers. Others belong more clearly to urban legend. Either way, they tell us something about how people respond to the underground. The catacombs are not only a place of bones, they are a place where the imagination enters the dark and tries to make meaning from it. One of the most enduring stories attached to the catacombs, though its documentation remains uncertain, is that Napoleon Bonaparte himself descended into the ossuary before its official opening. Whether this belongs to historical record or has grown into legend over time, the image has proved lasting. One of Europe's most powerful men, standing beneath Paris, surrounded by the same walls as everyone else. What he thought, history does not clearly tell us. And perhaps that silence is fitting. Before the story goes too far into the dark, it is worth keeping one thing clear. The catacombs themselves are real. The overcrowded cemeteries were real. The transfer of remains beginning in 1786 was real. The ossuary opened to public visits in the early 19th century. And the remains of approximately 6 million people are held beneath Paris. Those facts are already powerful enough. The stories of hidden chambers, strange sounds, lost explorers, and unseen presences belong to a different category. Some are reported experiences, some are local folklore, some may be warnings shaped into stories over time. They may add atmosphere, they may reveal how deeply the underground affects people, but they should not be treated as proven supernatural events. In a place like the catacombs, the verified history is already striking enough. The truth alone is enough to leave a mark. Paris has not hidden its catacombs. A city that wanted to erase this part of itself would not maintain an official site and allow visitors to descend beneath the streets. The ossuary is not a secret. That is not an accident. A city that chose to make this visible instead of sealing it off and pretending it does not exist, is telling us something about how it chooses to remember. This is not a contradiction Paris tries to solve. It is simply what happens when a city has been lived in for so long that its past cannot be separated from its present. The stone of grand buildings came from below. The quarry tunnels became dangerous. The cemeteries ran out of room. The remains were moved into the hollowed earth. The practical solution became a monument, and above it all, Paris went on building, planting gardens, writing poetry, opening cafés, falling in love on bridges. The catacombs are not just a dark secret beneath the romantic city. They are one of the honest foundations of it. Every beautiful city carries the weight of everything it has been. Paris simply makes that weight visible, 20 meters below the street. In a tunnel you can walk through if you choose to look. Paris will still be beautiful tomorrow. The cafés will open in the morning light. The barges will move along the Seine. The bells of the city's churches will sound across the rooftops. The museums will fill. The bridges will catch the last light of evening again. And 20 meters below all of that, in the dark and the cold and the particular silence of deep stone, that vast unnamed gathering of the dead will remain, where they have rested for more than 2 centuries. Arranged in their walls, marked by carved phrases, mostly unnamed, impossible to ignore, the city of love is also a city built above the dead, not as a curse, not as a secret, not as proof of anything supernatural, but as a truth that makes Paris feel more real than the postcard version ever could. Every city has its underground. Every beautiful place carries its shadow. Paris simply allows us to walk into that shadow through its official ossuary and think carefully about what we find there. What you carry back up the stairs with you is yours to decide. If these hidden layers, the stories beneath the cities the world thinks it already knows, are what brought you here. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. There are many more cities with shadows worth standing in. Leave a comment below telling us which city you want to walk beneath next. We read everyone, and your choices help shape where we go from here.